Sup guys, so it's currently 8:30 in the morning and this is actually a very exciting day because finally Jin is going to take his driving test today. We've been waiting for the last couple of months for this day. Finally it's here, but of course he's still sleeping like a log. But we're gonna wake him up this morning with some interesting news. Minnesota had a blizzard last night and we have 8 inches of fresh snow on the ground and it's still snowing. This is going to be a nightmare for Jin. Let's go wake him up. Look at him, guys. He's just taking over the entire bed right now. Jin. Oh, there he is. Jin. Jin. Hello? Are you for real?
For what?
What do you mean for what? Today is a very important day. Don't you remember?
My driving test.
So why are you still sleeping when we have to leave in 10 minutes?
It's okay. It's a piece of cake.
No. You need to get up and you need to peek out the window really quick.
It's snowing so much.
I told you.
There's no road.
I told you. We got a blizzard last night. 8 inches of snow.
Does that mean my driving test is cancelled?
Oh no. I contacted them when I woke up this morning and they said if you cancel, you have to pay them $20.
How do I drive here? There's no road.
Exactly. You've never driven in this kind of condition before. Do you think you're gonna pass your road test?
Oh, shoot. I don't want to wait another 3 months.
You got this. Come on. Let's get up. Let's get ready.
How do they score this in this weather? There's no line.
I guess they judge you on common sense.
Oh my god. Can you even go there? It's snowing so
That's
much.
why we need to leave now. It's gonna take us twice as long to get there.
Okay. Let's go. Let's go. I can't believe I have to take this driver's test in this blizzard.
Blizzard.
How do you pronounce it?
You got a little bit of a Korean E sound going on. Say bleh.
Bleh.
No, bleh.
Bleh.
Blizzard.
Blizzard.
There you go. You just gotta talk low.
I can't believe I have to take this test in this blizzard.
But don't separate it too much. Don't say blizzard.
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 Blizzard. Okay.
Perfect.
제가 아침부터 이렇게 한껏 꾸미고 있는데요. 이게 왜 그런 거냐면 미국 운전면허 시험은 실기 시험에 합격하고 그 자리에서 즉석으로 사진을 찍고 그 사진이 여러분들이 평생 쓸 운전면허증 사진이 돼요. 그래가지고 오늘 제가 이 눈보라 치는 날씨에서 운전면허 합격을 할지를 모르겠는데 혹시 모르니까 예쁘게 하고 가려고요. 실제로 나와보니까 진짜 도로 경계가 하나도 안 보이네요. 도로 라인들도 하나도 안 보이고 지금 어디서부터 어디까지가 중앙선인지 모르겠어요. 역시 눈이 많이 오는 미네소타 주답게 이 정도 눈은 아무것도 아니라서 운전면허 시험은 포기하지 않나 봐요.
Because this weather is crazy right now and because Jin has actually never driven in a blizzard before, I'm driving him to his road test. He's taking his road test on a closed course, not on the open road, so I think this is the best option for today. I'm stressed though right now. It is slippery out here. Oh my gosh, I have to change lanes. Hold on. I can't even tell where the lanes are. I think I'm in a lane, but I don't know. I hate this. I do not miss driving in the snow. That's one thing for sure.
많은 분들께서 댓글로 왜 항상 운전은 레이만 하냐, 남편은 안 하냐라고 물어보셨는데 다 이유가 있어요. 제가 한국에서 국제운전면허증을 가져와서 저도 법적으로 여기 미국에서 운전을 할 수 있지만 제가 미국 운전면허증은 없으니까 보험료라도 아껴보자고 레이만 지정운전자를 해서 그래서 저는 그동안 운전을 안 했던 거예요. 어차피 주행거리도 그렇게 많지 않고요. 그런데 미국에서 실기 자동차 운전면허 시험을 보려면 저도 보험이 있어야 돼요. 그래서 며칠 전에 레이가 제 이름도 올렸는데 제가 나이가 있어서 그런지 오히려 보험료가 더 떨어지더라고요. 그래서 보험료 아껴보려고 제 이름을 안 넣은 게 그게 실수였어요.
Driving here I was so stressed. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles hurt. Oh my goodness gracious. But we're here now. I parked in the parking lot so we can talk to you guys for just half a second, but then I actually have to take Jin through a drive-through and give them all of his documentation, and then we have to wait, I guess, until the test evaluator can meet with Jin. How are you feeling?
지금 너무 떨려가지고 지금 촬영도 못 하겠어요. 떨어질까봐.
It's gonna be okay. I know you can't see any lines on the road in this course, but it'll be fine.
Could be better because it's like, oh, I didn't know that was the line. Like, you know.
I don't know if they're gonna be that lenient with you, but I think as long as you drive extra slow and show your defensive driving skills, they'll probably be okay.
무서워.
It's gonna be okay. You got this. Right, guys? Cheer for Jin. He's gonna do well. I just feel it in my gut. We also installed the dash cam in our last video, so hopefully if all goes well, we'll have like live footage from Jin's driving test so you guys can judge him.
No, don't judge me.
Okay, I'm too nervous for you. I'm nervous on your behalf, so I think let's turn the camera off and let's just get this taken care of. I want to get you in line and ready to go and make sure there's no issues with your paperwork, so let's do that. Before we show you the footage, I want you to quickly write in the comments. Do you think Jin passed or did he fail?
참고로 저는 운전면허 시험에 진짜 완전 전문가예요. 왜냐면 저는 한국 운전면허도 있고 그리고 미국 운전면허도 사실 있어요. 여기 제가 뉴저지 살 때 16살인가 17살인가 그때 시험을 봐가지고 제가 운전면허 시험만 한 3-4번 본 것 같아요. 지금까지 살면서.
You've probably taken the driving test more than most people.
But that does not mean that I'll pass.
What do you mean? But if you took the test that many times, how can you fail?
There's a saying, monkeys can fall in Korea.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. What? So I'm kind of curious because it's been more than 10 years since you took a driving test in the US. What about this US driving test made you the most nervous?
뭐 제가 걱정됐던 거는 여러 가지가 있는데 우선 제일 걱정됐던 거는 레이한테 되게 미안해서요. 미네소타는 코로나 이후에 50%의 운전면허 시험장이 문을 닫아가지고 지난번에 레이가 제 운전면허 시험 약속 잡아주는데 막 거의 전화통화를 30분에서 1시간 동안 하더라고요. 전화를 너무 안 받아가지고. 그래서 만약에 제가 떨어지면은 그러면 스케줄을 다시 해야 되고 그리고 제가 필기 시험을 9월에 봤거든요. 근데 지금 12월이잖아요. 3개월을 기다렸는데 또 3개월을 기다리거나 막 그럴까봐 되게 걱정이 됐고 그리고 뭐 주차가 제일 걱정이 됐어요. 왜냐면 저는 10년 동안 센서랑 그리고 뭐 360도 버드뷰 그런 거에 의존해가지고 운전을 하다 보니까 아무 센서도 없고 기능도 없는 레이 차로 주차해야 된다는 게 되게 걱정이 많았어요.
I'm sorry that my car is not fancy enough for you.
It's okay. 미국은 자기 차를 가져가서 시험 보는 거기 때문에 옵션이 좋은 차를 끌고 가면은 시험 보는데 합격 확률이 되게 높을 것 같아요.
But there's something else too, right?
Yeah.
When we were researching the place where Jin took his driving test, I saw many comments about one of the workers there. She's like a blonde lady that wears sunglasses, and she's known for automatically failing people within the first 2 to 3 minutes of taking the test.
Yeah.
We were terrified that Jin was gonna get that lady, but that woman actually approached our car, and we were both just like, no, please, not us.
딱 그분 같더라고요.
Thankfully, she just walked on by, and Jin did not have to be her next victim.
But we got the young and cool guy, right?
Yeah, actually, I felt kind of positive when I got out of the car and talked to him for a second. Because I actually had to explain to him, like, bro, just so you know, the blinker sound inside the car, it doesn't work. And he's like, oh, no worries. It's so easy to tell when someone's using their blinker. It doesn't matter that the sound doesn't work.
그래서 사실 저 연습했거든요. 이렇게 운전 깜빡이 킬 때. 이렇게.
Did you do that during your test?
No, I couldn't.
That would have been so funny. Oh my gosh, I wish you would have. He probably would have laughed out loud.
I couldn't think. I was so nervous, you know what I'm saying?
Of course, I totally understand. Actually, I'm really proud of my husband, Jin, because first of all, I think taking a driving test is scary, just in general. Like, I took my road test on a perfect day, sunny, warm, no weather conditions, no crazy traffic or anything, and I was still so nervous. I told Jin this before, but when I was taking my road test, for some reason my heat was turned all the way up and it was in the summer. And the test instructor sat next to me and he was just sweating. And while I was driving, taking the test, he just asked me, do you know why it's so hot in here? And I was like, I don't know why. And I was like, oh, the heat's on. I had to turn it off. So I fucked up like that, okay? Jin had to take the driving test in the US, in Minnesota, during a blizzard, in a language that's not even his native language. Can you imagine how stressful that would be? So while Jin took his driving test, I had to go wait inside this building with like tiny little windows, and I was too nervous, so I couldn't even look outside. I just pretended like Jin didn't exist, basically, because I didn't want to see any mistake and then like freak myself out and get more nervous.
뭔가 그 자식 수능 보게 하고 기도하시는 그 학부모의 마음이었나 봐요.
So I just sat in the waiting room, just... But how long did it take, approximately?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
That's it? It felt like an eternity. Oh my gosh. So scary. So what were some of the things that he tested you on?
일단 미국 운전면허 시험은 뭐 물론 다 다르겠지만 미네소타주는 주차가 가장 비중이 큰 것 같아요. 90° 백인이라고 후면 주차랑 그리고 평행 주차, 그 패럴럴 파킹이라고 그러죠. 그 두 개는 운전을 잘 자신 없으신 분들이 가장 힘들어하는데 저는 뭐 운전을 한국에서도 오래 하고 미국에서도 했기 때문에 그렇게 별로 힘들진 않았어요. 근데 눈이 많이 와가지고 뭔가 이렇게 경계가 흐릿흐릿하니까 그게 좀 힘들었는데 애매하니까 그 감독관도 웬만하면 다 패스 시켜주는 것 같더라고요.
You know, something I think that's super unfair to Jin and everybody else that took their driving test today, you could not see the lines on the road. Even me, I had no idea. Is it a 2-lane road? Is it a 4-lane road? Is it a one-way? I have no idea because they didn't even clear off the signs. There's like snow covering the signs. How did you deal with that?
그냥 감으로 아 이거겠지 저거겠지 그러면서 했어요. 그리고 감독관한테 It's really hard to see the lanes.
I get that, yeah. Just treat them like they're, unmarked.
So I don't know about other states, but in Minnesota specifically, you have two options when you go to take your road test. Either you can take your road test on real roads and real streets with real traffic and real pedestrians, which is what I did, or you can take your test on a closed course, which is what Jin ended up doing. We actually didn't have a choice. He was just assigned to the closed course because that's what was available at the time that he scheduled. But I did hear that taking your test on a closed course is actually much more difficult because the driving instructors, they expect perfection, basically. They know that course like the back of their hand. If you make a single tiny mistake, it's not really forgivable because it's a closed course.
Yeah.
Like if you make a mistake on the closed course, you're definitely gonna make a mistake in the real world.
And I made a mistake.
Did you?
I drove over the sidewalk.
You drove over the...
제 눈이 엄청 쌓여 있더라고요.
And then we're gonna turn right down the next road, okay?
원래 우회전 할 때 가장 가까운 레인으로 우회전 해야 되잖아요. 저는 그게 눈 쌓인 건 줄 알고 거기를 밟고 지나갔는데 사실 거기가 그 도보더라고요.
Can we move over a little more?
Okay, yeah.
It's a really low sidewalk, but it is a sidewalk. Just be careful, okay?
I thought it was snow. 그다음에 미안, 진짜 몰랐다고 이거 눈 쌓인 건 줄 알았다고 억울하다는 식으로 얘기했는데 애매해가지고 좀 봐주더라고요.
I think if I did that on my test, I would be so embarrassed with myself that I would just give up at that point.
Isn't
Like
it
the test is over for me.
Isn't it like automatic failure if it wasn't us?
Oh, if you drive on the sidewalk without snow there, oh, you're definitely failing, bro.
그래서 저 진짜 떨어질 뻔했어요. 진짜 눈 덕분에 사는 거예요.
They're gonna say, oh, this guy's a risk to society. He's just gonna run over pedestrians left and right. We can't give him a license. So now that you've taken the road test for yourself, what tips would you give other people who are about to take their road test?
미국 운전이랑 한국 운전이랑 제일 큰 차이점은 스탑 사인. 한국에는 스탑 사인이 없는 걸로 알고 있는데 미국에서는 스탑 사인을 보면 무조건 3초 정지해야 돼요. 물론 미국 사람들도 3초 안 기다리지만 운전면허 시험장에서는 그나마 3초를 기다려야 되거든요. 그리고 미국에서는 이게 차선 바꿀 때 백미러만 보지 말고 그리고 뒤로 완전히 돌려서 보라고 그래요. 이게 근데 애매하면은 이 사람이 감정할 수도 있으니까 이렇게 막 과장해가지고 막 이렇게 블라인드 스팟 이렇게 체크하는, 그러니까 숄더 체크라고 하죠. 그래서 그거를 무조건 과장해서 하셔야 되고, 그리고 또 중요한 거는 굉장히 천천히 가셔야 돼요. 왜냐면은 도로가 가상의 도로이기 때문에 굉장히 짧아요. 그래서 좌회전 하세요 하는데 차선 변경 2번, 3번 하고 그 다음에 넘어가려면은 시간이 부족하거든요. 속도가 빠르면은. 그래서 거의 막 10마일 막 이렇게 가야 돼요. 그래서 저는 눈 오는 거 핑계대고 더 천천히 갔어요. 왜냐면 생각할 시간을 좀 갖게. 이게 사인들도 다 보고 1A인지 2A인지 그리고 스탑사인 있는지 없는지 그리고 차선이 어딘지 생각할 게 굉장히 많기 때문에 무조건 천천히 가세요. 무조건. 저처럼.
There was one single time that I peeked out the window to see how you were doing. I swear you were going only like 5 miles per hour. You looked like a freaking grandma. I could have walked faster than you were driving. That guy was probably like, how long am I gonna have to sit in the car with this guy? He's going so slow.
근데 진짜 그게 꿀팁이에요. 빨리 가면은 라인 바꿀 시간이 없어요. 이게 너무 짧아가지고.
Something that I think is so funny is that when I was researching about driving tests in other states, I found out that even if it's raining really hard, a lot of the DMVs will actually cancel driving tests because of unsafe weather conditions. But here, if 8 inches of snow, screw you guys. You gotta go to school still. You gotta drive. You gotta get to work. I don't care.
그리고 제가 미네소타에서 운전면허 시험을 보고 느낀 점인데 한국 사람들은 떨어질 수가 있겠더라고요. 왜냐면은 한국에서는 도로가 되게 다 잘 돼 있고 되게 명확하잖아요. 이게 일방통행인지 라인이 몇 개인지 그리고 도로 정비도 자주 하고 페인트 칠도 막 자주 해가지고 잘 보이잖아요. 근데 미국은 땅이 넓다 보니까 좀 제대로 설명이 제대로 있지도 않고 라인들도 막 흐리고 없는 데도 있고 막 그래요. 그래서 안내판에 되게 의존을 해야 되는데 뭐 one way, two way 뭐 이렇게. 근데 그게 눈에 잘 안 들어오거든요. 특히 운전면허 시험 볼 때는. 그런데 제가 본 미네소타 운전면허 시험장은 그 페인트가 운전면허 시험장인데도 되게 흐릿흐릿하고 도로 상태가 굉장히 안 좋더라고요. 그래서 제가 추천하는 거는 구글맵 들어가셔가지고 자기가 시험 보는 위치에 위성 뷰를 보시고 그리고 맵을 외워가세요.
Anyway, guys, when Jin finished his driving test, the driving instructor told him to park in the parking lot so that he could give him some feedback, right?
Yeah.
So I saw when Jin parked in the parking lot because it was like perfectly in my vision. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, what happened? What happened? And I just stared at them for literally like 4 or 5 minutes. I don't know how long it really was, but it felt like that long. And nothing was happening. I figured if he passed, the guy would have just gotten out of the car instantly, but they just sat there for a long time.
주차를 하니까 그분이 합격 여부를 알려주는 게 아니라 제가 실수한 거를 먼저 알려주더라고요. 제가 아까 말씀드렸던 그 사이드워크를 침범한 거 저는 당연히 그 눈 쌓인 건 줄 알고 갔고 그거는 뭐 눈이 와가지고 애매하니까 좀 봐주신 것 같아요. 그리고 눈이 많이 내려가지고 도로가 안 보이니까 중앙선을 제가 살짝 침범했나 봐요. 이렇게 좌회전 하다가. 근데 그것도 뭐 감점 정도만 해준 것 같아요. 그리고 나서 마지막으로 저한테 합격했다고. 미네소타에서는 눈 오는 날도 운전을 할 일이 많으니까 이런 거에 익숙해지라면서 격려해 주시고 나갔어요.
Of course Jin passed. How could he fail? How could this smart husband of mine fail his driving test? I'm so proud of him still. How scary. If I had to take my driving test under the same conditions, I guarantee I would have failed. So good job. Good job. This was like the last step that we had to take for Jin's US immigration, at least for a while. So I think I was more stressed than Jin about this whole thing. I probably made him more freaked out by giving him help like this.
You're more freaked out.
But that's because like I knew not to put pressure on you, but I knew that if you did not pass, it would take a long time to get your license. Like we'd have to go through the whole scheduling thing again, and it's going to be many months before you can take the test again. And I just didn't want to have to deal with it because it's stressful for both of us.
Yeah.
Now it's done. You don't have to do it ever again.
No, never.
As long as you don't forget to renew your license, which I will not let you forget. 4 years from now, you got to renew it, okay? Mark your calendar. I mean, we have viewers from all over the world. Every time we read our comments, I swear I'm seeing people from more and more countries commenting. So I'm really curious what driving tests are like in your country. We can only talk about the Korean driving test and the US driving test because we've never had to take a driving test in any other country. But If you are living abroad, for example, if you're Korean living abroad, how was it like taking a driving test in a foreign country? Was it as easy peasy lemon squeezy as Jin's? Or was it an absolute nightmare?
Wasn't easy.
Wasn't easy?
Yeah, because I was stressed.
You did a good job. I'm so proud of you. I will be proud of you. I don't care what you think, I'm proud of you, okay? And I want everybody else to be proud of my husband too, okay? Anyway, guys, we're gonna leave you here and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Oh, say can you see